And we're back. This is the QB Lab podcast. I'm your host, Jake, with my co host, Zach. And we are here to discuss, as always, the greatest position in all of sports, the quarterback position. That's right. There is no more important position in any sport across the globe other than the quarterback position. We have so much to talk about today. This is really exciting because I get to call this the Q1 QB Lab report card. That's what this is. We are going to be covering, we're almost a quarter way through the NFL season, and we want to cover all the teams, all the quarterbacks, talk about guys getting benched, guys getting good pro football focus grades, guys getting bad grades, what their stats look like. We got so much to break down, so many exciting surprises, I think, in this season. That's the biggest thing. Surprise number one, Daniel Jones. The Indianapolis Colts look good, and Daniel Jones looks great. How do you feel about Daniel Jones?
Okay. Daniel Jones is really interesting to me because the first three games that he had was probably not the hardest schedule. So he immediately jumps out with these crazy PFF grades. But what I think is the most fun part of this to stress is how much of a garbage organization the New York Giants have been in previous seasons. Because once Saquon leaves, he wins a Super Bowl. Once Daniel Jones leaves, he makes the Indianapolis Colts, who we thought were dead in the water in the offseason, look like they're contending for a playoff spot. But I do think that what we've seen in this first 4 game stretch is not likely to continue quite in the same way. And I think we're starting to see that with the signs that we saw in this fourth game. Now, Jake, they could have won this game against the Rams. There was an Adonai Mitchell, which, by the way, great name, an Adonai Mitchell touchdown where he lets go of the football as he's crossing the goal line and it goes out of bounds to basically turn a touchdown into another possession for the LA Rams. But I think the difficulty with Daniel Jones is he's always had the talent. He's also always had some pretty strong intuition about when to scramble, which has been able to extend drives in a really cool way. But from a mental game point of view, he's not an elite quarterback. And we see this as we go into the fourth quarter where the game is on the line. Matthew Stafford having that ice in his veins puts them up a touchdown, and Dale Jones down a touchdown has a game-winning drive to try to be able to make it happen. He doesn't look like the same quarterback. Once he's in a position where people are expecting things of him, once there's actual pressure that's happening, I think he turns into a bit of a different guy. And he's not a guy I can trust down the stretch.
Yeah, I think that that's totally fair. Look, we need to understand this is Q1, right? It's only 4 games. You don't know exactly what you can extrapolate from these 4 games, but it's certainly promising to at least see him moving in this direction and performing at a much higher level. And when we look at PFF, Pro Football Focus, he is ranked the sixth quarterback overall in terms of offense. And to your point, very similar both in pass and run. So we know he can run the ball and he can clearly run it effectively, which I think will help him. And we'll see if he can really maintain the passing grade of being in that 76 plus range. The other the other piece I want to bring up is he's got a team around him. He's got a great running game. I mean, you and I are going to talk more about Josh Allen and the Bills running game, but a running game can make a quarterback's job incredibly easy.
And you know what can make Daniel Jones' job way easier? Of those top 10 quarterbacks that you're seeing in PFF data, he's getting pressured the least. So he's able to kind of take his time, make a good decision, and he's got enough talent there where if there's not enough pressure, he's good to go. But the second he's facing pressure and the second he's in, and it can be pressure from the defensive line or it can just be game level pressure because the psychological part of being a quarterback obviously is a very important piece of this. The second that there's actual pressure to be had, Daniel Jones kind of looks like shades of his former self. But I think overall, the key takeaway for me is the Giants organization in prior years has not done its job of putting its best players in positions to succeed. And that shows as soon as they go to new franchises and you see them have star performances on their new teams.
Yeah, and it's worth noting the Indianapolis Colts obviously have a great track record with quarterbacks and young quarterbacks and developing them. So it's certainly at the very least, it's been a great landing spot for him. Unfortunate for Anthony Richardson, but of course, you can't develop everyone, but it does certainly look like he's at least moving in the right direction. Another guy we need to cover because it's America's team, Dak Prescott. It's an interesting one. Obviously a lot of hype around him, a lot of negativity around him, just for the plain reason that he's being paid the most out of any quarterback in the league. Well, fortunately for him, PFF has graded him the number one quarterback right now based on offensive grade. And passing wise, I mean, rushing, okay, nothing really to be impressed about. But in terms of passing, he's an over 90 on his passing grade. And I've watched quite a bit of them, and he has looked good, at least in major moments of the games. Any thoughts on Prescott at this point?
Dak Prescott, I think PFF is overestimating him a bit because of how much they factor completion percentage. I'm seeing him at 72.9%, which is really only lower than Jared Goff of the eligible quarterbacks on this list. Now, that being said, I do think there is also the overestimation because he's had two games going in overtime. So when we're looking at these aggregate statistics, he just had way more playing time than some of the other quarterbacks that are on this list. But that being said, I think generally speaking, he's looked like a serviceable quarterback. Like I would trust him more than like Jordan Love right now. I would trust him more than like a bunch of other quarterbacks that are being rated fairly highly. And of course, he's dealing with that game with CD Lamb and George Pickens where there's a egregious number of drops. And from week 4, in that game against the Green Bay Packers, there's a lot of things to be excited about. I think he's got a newfound connection with George Pickens, which we can bank on going into the future. And there's quite a few other pieces around him that we can feel quite confident in. Like Jake Ferguson, he's getting a crazy amount of the target share and he looks solid. I like Tolbert. I like Turpin. Javonte Williams is helping them up the middle. And this offensive line is doing a good enough job of not having an egregiously high pressure percentage. I think he ranks fairly high relative to some of these other PFF top 10 quarterbacks that are in this list. Dak Prescott looks serviceable this year. The defense is obviously atrocious, so they're going to have to win a whole bunch of shootouts. But overall, Dak has actually looked pretty good.
Talking about another guy who has not had a lot of options as of late, although just entering this last week, he certainly got a key piece back in Worthy. Patrick Mahomes is an interesting one because he's had what I would deem as a relatively slow start to the season. Statistically, I don't think he's way off, but of course, he's had to run a lot more. He's had to be a lot more desperate in his play. I'm curious to get your thoughts on Mahomes, more not just necessarily on a grading perspective, but just also on what we've seen because you and I have watched a lot of him as well.
Yeah, watching Patrick Mahomes in the first 3 weeks of the season was actually a punishment. That was some of the most painful football. Now, football is the best sport by a mile. When football's at its best, it's obviously the best sport, and it's not even close. But there's also like quite a lot of bad football. I don't think that's an egregious thing to say here. But Patrick Mahomes in scramble only mode is very painful to watch. Actually, if I look at this PFF data, he's leading the NFL right now in scrambles at 18 through 4 weeks. He's had so few passing options that he's just had to take the ball into his own hands. Now, getting Xavier Worthy back, this is good football. Now I can actually feel good because we're starting to see Patrick Mahomes take some of these shots downfield. Xavier Worthy looks good in his return coming back from the shoulder injury. In a couple of weeks, when we get Rashee Rice back, I think we're going to get the Kansas City Chiefs of old, and they're going to go right back to looking like a team that's worth winning that division.
Yeah, totally. Mahomes until this past week really struggled. And I don't necessarily blame him entirely for it, right? I think the team that they've put around him is nowhere near the caliber that they've ever given him in the past. But, I think over the course of the season, like we've seen many times with the Chiefs, is by the time it comes playoff time, they usually have their stuff, have their shit figured out. Another guy to cover here who I would say their team just lit it up to start the season is Jordan Love. Jordan Love right now is ranked the 5th quarterback in PFF, and he is just below Josh Allen. His statistics, though, I mean, as a passer, he's actually got a higher grading than Josh Allen as of right now, as of 4 weeks. And that to me is shocking because I've watched both of them plenty. Allen, I've seen a ton of. I mean, we don't miss a Bills game. And with that, I'm shocked that Allen doesn't even have an 80 plus grading. And then Jordan Love, who I think has looked good, but certainly not great, has an over 82 grading. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. I do think his completion percentage should be noted, just being under that 70% mark. And his ADOT, average depth per target, is just over 8. So it's not like he's lighting it up by any means.
Yeah, I think that's a look. Jordan Love is not better than Josh Allen. I think as I kind of go into this PFF data a bit more, it looks like they're giving Jordan Love 9 big time throws relative to Josh Allen's 4, which is why I think they're probably giving him that PFF grade improvement. But I think what we're seeing from these first 4 weeks of the season is that Jordan Love is not he doesn't have the same type of like winning DNA as the elite quarterbacks do. I think that Green Bay offense, or that Green Bay team rather, is getting helped a lot by that elite defense. Getting Micah Parsons in there has made them look like just a completely different defensive line, which obviously makes sense when you've got that kind of talent coming through. But the thing that's driving me nuts about the Green Bay Packers right now is how they're managing their wide receiver room. And this dates back to me for a couple seasons. Like if you've been watching the Green Bay Packers in last season, the season before, Jaden Reed's been their most talented receiver, and they just don't include him in 2 wide receiver sets. Doesn't make sense to me. For some reason, they are leaning so heavily on Romeo Dobbs and Dontavian Wicks, who just don't have the same type of explosiveness. And now this year, the most explosive wide receiver in that room is Matthew Golden, and they're just not leveraging him. But this isn't about the wide receivers. This is about the quarterback. And what we've seen from this season is when the Green Bay Packers are in crunch time, Jordan Love is just not making the throws. There is no universe where Jordan Love should have a close game with that Dallas Cowboys team whose defense is basically non existent. That team should be not capable of beating a top caliber team. I think for them to be able to be successful, we got to figure out how to get Jordan Love in a rhythm, figure out how to get him to be making some of those top decisions. Because right now, if they continue to play like this, they're going to be one of the most talented teams in the NFL that completely underperforms right when the playoffs come. And it's a shame to see, especially because I love that I love what that Green Bay franchise stands for. I love that there's the shared ownership among, like, it's one of those fun fan bases to root for from a distance. And Jordan Love should be that guy. He's getting paid like he's that guy, but he's not making decisions right now as that guy. And I think that you got to shuffle around that wide receiver room to give him the best chance to be able to make those good decisions.
I have the next guy to talk about that is perfectly tied to what you were just talking about. An amazing franchise, tons of success, knows how to build good winning teams, has won Super Bowls, but they have a quarterback at the helm that I think is missing that same piece that you talked about, Jordan Love, that elite ability to win in big moments. Lamar Jackson. I think he's the guy that has failed to win in big moments. There's a reason he struggles in the playoffs. There's a reason he struggles in big moment games during the season. He fumbles in big moments. He throws interceptions in big moments. He may only throw a few interceptions a year, but the ones he throws tend to be crucial and game defining throws. He is ranked the 20th quarterback so far this year. And running wise, no problem. He's 84. But passing, which is really what I like to look at when we're talking about quarterbacks, he's at a 55. I mean, if you're looking just at that, it's pathetic. Now, I get it. You can look at the other stats and say, well, he's got 10 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. This is amazing. But you have to watch the games. He also has very few dropbacks. He only has 119 dropbacks. That has to mean something, right?
Yeah. I mean, what sticks out to me the most First off, that Baltimore defense does not look as good as it did last season, which is shocking to me. They're gonna get that figured out by the end of the season. They're just too good not to. But the thing that's really jumping out to me about his stats right now, he's got 15 sacks. There's only one quarterback who's getting sacked more right now, and that's Cam Ward. So it's interesting because he might have 10 touchdowns for one interception, but he's clearly holding the ball too long. Now, I know that the stats can be quite higher for the time to throw stats for some of the scrambling quarterbacks. He's only got 9 scrambles. So he's got half as much as Patrick Mahomes this season. And he's got a time to throw of 3.15 seconds, which makes him one of the slowest quarterbacks in this regard. Now, he's able to do a lot more with his feet, and he's an absolute athletic freak here. But when he's passing, he's kind of dipping and dunking, and he's taking a bit too long to make those decisions. Now, is that resulting in a higher completion percentage? Sure. Is that creating a really good TD to interception ratio here? Yeah. But when you've got yourself getting sacked more than any other quarterback, those lost downs are complete drive killers. And they have had a pretty tough schedule to this point. I think a lot of people coming in thought they were going to be a top team. I know when I was looking at the NFL futures coming into the season to see which team had the best odds to win the Super Bowl, Baltimore was rated number one. But Lamar, he's not making great decisions in terms of how long to hold the ball. He's surely getting quite a few touchdowns, and that's obviously getting augmented by the fact that he's had that shootout in game one where like that very much bolstered some of those underlying statistics there. But right now, the decision making isn't there. The offensive line is performing weaker, and he doesn't have the same amount of defensive help. So this Baltimore team, if they don't get it kind of figured out, they're gonna be at risk of very much underperforming for the rest of the season.
There's another great guy to talk about that you and I have talked about plenty, and we were super excited about him when he came into the league just this year. Jaxson Dart. He finally got his opportunity to shine, and boy, did he not exactly shine. He had a lot of positives. I think there's a lot of positives to take from it. Look, it's his first game of his career. Things aren't going to be perfect, but I thought he looked relatively comfortable. I thought he used his legs well. I think that's a good sign, and I think that it shows his comfort level, and I think he's got a long way to go. But I think at the very least, we should at least be looking at him as a much larger success than Cam Ward in the limited data we have right now. You got to take Jaxson Dart over Cam Ward right now, right?
Oh, yeah, and you and I had this from before the NFL draft, from before us knowing which team was going to get these two quarterbacks. Jaxson Dart, from the metrics, just seemed like the more confident guy. He had the higher average depth of target in college. He had a lot of these peripheral statistics in his favor, and he looked good against a tough LA Chargers defense. He breaks away for a couple key scrambles and key moments going up the middle, not hesitating whatsoever. He gets himself into the end zone in a couple key spots too, and they get a W. Was it clean? No. But is that impressive for a rookie quarterback against a Justin Herbert led team that looked pretty good the first 3 weeks of the season? He's not supposed to win in that spot, and he gets a W. He, at the very least, looks like he's got some of that underlying winning quarterback DNA, which we have not seen from Cam Ward to this point in the season. And it's encouraged. If I'm a Giants fan, I'm ecstatic right now. Like seeing him and Scattaboo celebrating at the end of the game. I don't know if you saw that reel of Hey Big Blue. They look, I love that team. I like seeing Jaxson Dart running and scrambling the way that he has. There's a lot to ask for in his passing game, which is about to get a lot harder now that Malik Neighbors has that season-ending injury. But seeing him with like Cam Scattaboo style of like he looks like a guy who eats crayons for a living, like watching those two combinations of people bolster this offense, this next era of the Giant, like it's going to be must-watch football from here on out.
And I think that's something for people to remember is yes, we go through the data. Yeah, we're talking about, good players, etc. We're looking at their stats, whatever. But at the end of the day, there's something else there. There's an intangible that really does matter. And the attitude and the passion they bring to the locker room. There's no question that what Jaxson Dart brings in terms of his personality is special. And it's something that you hope is going to catapult the New York Giants franchise it's something just for people to understand that there is this one piece of a quarterback's DNA that you cannot measure and that no one could measure when Brady was drafted is that winnability. That's what I like to call it. I like to call it winnability because it doesn't matter just what the stats say. It doesn't matter about, well, how many times did he throw? How many times did he do this? What's his average, depth of target? All those things, they're all important. But at the end of the day, you want a guy that wins. And wins are really, at the end of the day, all that matters. If you win, no one's complaining. As soon as you start losing, that's when problems sneak through.
And I'll say this, I think Dable might have saved his job. I think like if this was just like a Russell Wilson offense, Dable's fired by week 6. I think Dable saved his job by convincing the GM that, hey, Dart's my guy and let's go for it.
Yeah, I think he knew that too, right? There's no question he's on the hot seat, especially in a place like New York, especially in the Giants organization, where it's such a crucial piece to the NFL. The hot seat was ready to explode on Dayball's bald head. So definitely he had to go ahead and make that shift to beautiful blonde locks on Jaxson Dart's head.
Oh man, you had Daybald right there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's pretty close, right? So another guy to talk about here, another young gun, kind of a rookie, but not exactly because he did get drafted the year before. But JJ McCarthy, we got to see a little from him. Obviously, he goes down, currently injured. I think the thought is he's at least out for another 1 to maybe 2 more weeks. What do we think of him? I mean, I'm kind of a mixed bag on him. Obviously, I have him on my fantasy football team. I thought he was going to be great out the gate. I thought the Vikings were going to be great out the gate. I'm a little concerned about what I've seen from McCarthy. To me, he looked really uncomfortable, really nervous. And that's not surprising. I thought he'd be a little more comfortable at this point, just given everything we were hearing from training camp in the offseason.
Well, Jake, how can you be comfortable when your pressure percentage is 41%? Like, I don't think it's sustainable for any quarterback, regardless if they're like an almost rookie or if they're a seasoned vet, to be able to overcome. Like, he's got 9 sacks in 2 games. Like, this isn't a situation where he's really had that crazy of an opportunity to succeed. Now, I also am not a fan of what we've seen actually out of like his throws, right? Like if you got a sub 60 completion percentage, you're not making all that many big time throws. Like he does look like a substantial step back from Sam Darnold. And now it's even got me questioning like, hey, if you're a KOC and you saw what you got out of Darnold, like why didn't you just pay the guy? Like this could have been an elite Minnesota Vikings team that could have repeated a lot of what we saw from them last season. And to put all of the bet on JJ McCarthy, I'm not sure I love that bet right now anymore. So
Yeah,
like, yeah, like I think there's a combination of things going on here.
it's a tricky one. Look, with this small sample size, there's no question that I think we can confidently say in this sample that the move to let Darnold go and just roll with JJ McCarthy with a team of that caliber, with a roster that is so bound and ready for the Super Bowl, it was a big mistake. Sam Darnold right now is QB3. He has looked really
I think
good.
that's an overestimation we'll get to Sam Darnold in a sec, but
For sure.
he does look better than JJ McCarthy, obviously.
100%. And like, again, with any of this, of course, we know it's a small sample. We get that it's only 4 games, but this is our report card. We're dealing with what the hand we have dealt right now. And Sam Darnold has looked like a legitimate starting quarterback that can take a team far in the postseason. And what we have seen from JJ McCarthy is the total opposite. He's looked like a guy that's causing a lot of the problems for the Minnesota Vikings. Another guy we must talk about who has stepped up out of nowhere is Marcus Mariota. Where has he come from? Where has he been hiding? Because boy, oh boy, I don't know. Is it the Washington offense? What's going on here? Because Mariota, right now, as it stands on PFF, is graded the #1 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, so that's got to be a sample size. Like he's clearly not the best quarterback in the NFL right now, but he's good. Like, he's been more than serviceable. He's this season Sam Darnold, coming in as a top tier backup to be able to backfill a pretty good team. It's been really fun watching him play. Like, they're not just like running they're actually using Marcus Mariota. 4th and 1, like in week 4, he has an out route to Deebo Samuel for a conversion. On a 4th and 3, he throws a 20-yard bomb to Deebo Samuel for a touchdown. Like, they're not being conservative with Marcus Mariota in any sense. And it's really cool to see because I think a lot of his career was going to get stained by being on season 1 of quarterback and having that play out that storyline with that Atlanta offense. But he actually looks like someone that's deserving of being a starter in the NFL now. Now, I'm not saying that this is guaranteed to continue, but we've seen from this 2-week sample is enough to, like, if Jaden Dale needs to miss a couple weeks, that's fine. Like, you've got a pretty good quarterback 2 behind him that can make sure that Washington franchise doesn't turn Jaden Daniels into the next RG3, which you also predicted, I think, episode 2 a couple months back. So being able to see a backup be as serviceable as Marcus Mariota, it's a feel-good story. It's a guy that you want to see bounce back from that season 1 of quarterback, but he looks deserving of getting starts somewhere in the NFL.
Yeah, a feel-good story, pumping my chest. I so far look pretty damn right about Jaden Daniels. Now, we'll see what happens over the course of the season. But yeah, it's true. Marcus Mariota has stepped in as a wonderful backup. Could he become a starter if he puts together a really complete season and Jaden Daniels misses significant time? It's certainly possible. And to your point, and I know you love the data and you love the stats, when we're looking at him, yeah, he's got an almost 65% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, but this is the big piece here. The average depth of target. He's at 10.5, okay? When we look across the board, I'm pretty sure it's about the highest in the NFL right now. He
Ooh,
also
good question. Yeah, it is.
shockingly is being pressured. So it's not like he isn't under pressure. He's got one of the highest pressure rates at 17.6%. So he's handling that exceptionally well. So
You know what the
we
key
look
is
at
in that
the
data? The key in that data is the average depth of target, but also you have to marry that with the 2.54 time to throw. So he's also getting the ball out quickly, confidently. It's fun football to watch. I'm glad to, like, I think it points to like a broader conversation. I think when you invest an early first round draft pick, fans demand that you put up those results immediately. But I think what we're seeing with the Sam Darnold example, with the Marcus Mariota example, I'll even throw Baker Mayfield into this category as well, that maybe we just need to get a couple more seasons under the belt than fans are expecting. And we can start to see more confident quarterbacks that live up to the potential that we expect before the draft.
speaking of guys who take a while to get going, there is a guy who has struggled for the last couple of years with injuries and bad play, but he was given another opportunity and he's winning football games. Now, before I say his name, grading wise, horrible. Winning wise, excellent. Aaron Rodgers. Because this is a guy that everyone said was done. I continue to say he's done. He's a statue. He's immobile. He looks old. He looks rusted, but he's winning games. So it's like on the one side, I'm going, I'm right. Look at his stats. He sucks. He's graded horribly. He can't move. He can't handle the pressure. But on the other side, his team's winning and they're leading the division.
I mean, he's dinking and dunking. He's got the lowest average depth of target among all of these starting. He just isn't, he's a fraction of what he was. So is he winning games? Sure. Would an average starter win those same games? I can't say definitively, but I would venture probably. Like, I don't know that he's doing the Pittsburgh Steelers any real favors here. What I will say, though, is this past game, overseas, watching his relationship with DK Metcalf grow, I think is a storyline that I want to see. Like, if you've got an absolute horse in a wide receiver in DK Metcalf, it's it's fun to watch a guy that can still throw a go ball. Like, it's hilarious that he's got the lowest average depth of target among quarterbacks, despite the fact that he's chucking balls still to DK Metcalf downfield. It just shows a lot about what's in that underlying data. But I think that what I want to see is I want to see that relationship improve. I want to see a bit more. I want to call it ballsiness in the play calling, and I want to see that DK actually return to elite form. Like that's what I need in order to forgive the fact that Normani created, like who he's dating, created that garbage NFL float ad that I got to watch like 50 times a game. That's what I need in order to be able to forgive this whole situation and this miserable football that has honestly gone on from Pittsburgh Steelers to this point.
So we got some other really big names to cover here. And I don't think I'm surprised about any of them. I think they all seem to be somewhat in line what I would have expected. And I think the first one to talk about here is Jalen Hurts. Obviously, he's on a great team. They continue to roll. They continue to find ways to win, albeit it hasn't been clean, but they're finding ways to win. But as a passer, I still don't believe in him, and I feel like people will go crazy for me to say that I still don't think he's a top-tier quarterback. Just because he won a Super Bowl does not make him a top-tier quarterback. Now, it's funny because I'm playing with this idea, like, I talk about winnability, and then I talk about but the stats, and he's a really tricky one because he's winning a lot, and he's won a lot in the past, but statistically, I'm still not impressed. So at some point, do I have to come to terms with that maybe he's better than I thought? Or do I just keep riding on the idea that, look, the team around him is just that good?
I mean, I think it's hard to argue that Jalen Hurts is an elite passer. Like, where do you have him ranked in the PFF data?
So he's ranked number 10 through the first 4 weeks. However, when you actually look specifically at passing, which I think is something that should be noted, he is, I'm just trying to find him because he's so far down the list at number 20. He's in the range of CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, and Spencer Rattler. That's where he's fit in with.
So I think it's a really difficult one. I think you broke down the tension caused by these different variables in a pretty succinct way. I think he's an elite game manager, and he knows how to use his legs to affect a game, but he's not using his arm to affect the game. And I think the key there is look at his top passing options. It's not like AJ Brown is having a great season. It's not like Devontae Smith is having a great season. Dallas Goddard's having an okay season. Like it's not like his individual passing options are doing well, but the team around him is still winning games. They've got a great defense. They've got Saquon. They've got all kinds of other options that are going on. And he's just a smart guy that has enough of an arm to be, but he's not like if a laser beam was aimed at the planet and you're saying, who do you want throwing the football to save everyone? No one is saying, give me Jalen Hurts. Like they're in terms of just like pure passing of the football, we have several options that are better, but thankfully, being a quarterback is a multi-dimensional element. And if you were to say, hey, who do you want on your team to be able to manage a game effectively? Who's going to minimize some of these mistakes? And who's going to be able to try to get us the best chance at winning the football? Jalen Hurts improves greatly compared to just a passing grade. So, look, if you're going to be here and you're going to say, hey, Jalen Hurts is a great quarterback, you got to be a bit more specific about what about his game you think is great because it he isn't his passing ability.
Another guy who I think has taken a big step forward, and to your note about Jalen Hurts keeping those mistakes to a minimum, I think Caleb Williams has done a hell of a job. I think he's been very effective in this new system. And I think the stats show that he is, he's been a solid runner of the ball, a solid passer of the ball, nothing crazy, nothing to write home about, but he's definitely improved. Like, he's in that conversation. He's ranked 11 overall. He's got the 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. His completion percentage is a little low. But some of these other stats I do like. He's got an 8.5 depth of target. He's a little slow to get out the ball, which we know is an issue with him that's plagued him in his career. But there's no question we've seen a big step forward for him in this first month.
So I think we've seen a step forward. It's difficult for me to see how significant of a step forward we've seen. And a lot of this to me is emblematic of like game one. So in the first game of this season, he loses to JJ McCarthy, right? In that first half, Caleb Williams looks incredible. And the reason he looks great is because he's surveying the field and he noticed something similar to last year, which was his wide receivers are not getting separation. And we thought that wasn't going to be an issue coming into this season because you got Ben Johnson, who's creating motions before the snap. They bring in Colson Loveland, who I think has been really underutilized to this point. They're still riding with Cole Kmet, I imagine, a lot because of his blocking ability. And I want to see Colson Loveland take a bigger percentage of the offense as we head into later parts of the season. And they bring in Burden, who's had, I think game 3 was his big game. But while the Bears were winning and he didn't have a lot of game related pressure, you saw him when that separation was tightening feel comfortable using his legs to achieve first downs and move the offense forward. But as soon as that game script flipped and JJ McCarthy got his wings underneath him, you saw Caleb shrink. And this is my big issue with Caleb because he's winning games against teams he's supposed to, like, winning against the Dallas Cowboys and winning against the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm not going to give you crazy amount of points here for doing. Those are games where if you're the number one pick overall and you got this offense around you, I think like NFL fans have just expected so little that suddenly, hey, but we're now going to push Caleb Williams forward just because of how bad things have been in the past. But I don't know that that's like a reasonable take to have that we've seen that like he's supposed to be winning those games. What I want to be able to say is Caleb Williams had a signature game against a great defense where he had to put the team on his back, make key decisions. Because to this point, I haven't been able to see that. From a mental standpoint, he just hasn't shown me the ability to be a top tier quarterback yet. And can he get there? Sure. Like, I'm not trying to say he doesn't have that potential within him, but I'm not going to say he's got this massive leap forward when I saw what I saw in game 1 until we see a game deserving of getting rid of that stain that I think is on his record.
Yeah, and I think PFF got this one right, right? Giving him a 75 grade, I think, is exactly reminiscent of how you just described him. I think it's exactly reminiscent of how you described him. Again, I think he's taken a step forward. I think he's shown potential and promise a lot more than we saw last year. But yeah, I don't think anyone is cutting a check and saying, yeah, this is our franchise guy for the next 10 years. I think he's far from that. Another guy who's, I would argue, very similar boat is Drake May. I think we're seeing something very, very similar, in my opinion. You may not feel the same. I see this as, same kind of thing. I would argue that Drake May's looked better than Caleb Williams, although he's ranked lower. I actually think he's done a lot more and he's doing it with a lot less. I don't think he has a good team around him. So I am impressed with what I'm seeing from Drake May, but I certainly don't feel comfortable saying that he's the guy 100%, cut him the check, sign him for another 5 to 10 years. But I see a lot of promise. I mean, something that cannot be ignored in Drake May's stats, it can't be. He's at a 74% completion rate. That is mind-boggling, and he's still got 8 yards on a yard per attempt, so to me, he's still taking shots, he's still moving the ball, and he's maintaining a great completion percentage, so I'm impressed with him. I'm not putting him in the top tier yet, but he's showing promise.
Okay. There's a couple things that make me excited about Drake May. Before the season, I was saying I want 4 to 5 scrambles a game. Remember that? He's up to 15 scrambles and 4. He's at almost 4 scrambles a game. So I'm liking that part of it, that they're kind of letting Drake May be himself. But the thing that I think we got to give Drake May a little bit of credit here for is he's got a pressure percentage of 26%. That's one of every that no each one of those could be complete category killers. He's getting 13 sacks, and he is holding the ball a bit long. Like his time to throw right now is 2.93. But for him to be able to do that with the passing statistics that we've seen, I think there's a lot of promise that we're going to be able to get. But until he takes that step up, I think this is just a 500 football team. Like I like them more than a lot of teams in the league, but I do think overall we're probably looking at something that's more like middle of the pack. But I do like these strategic differences, but they do need to give him a bit more of an offensive line around him. They do need to give him a couple more of these shorter routes to be able to let him kind of dip and dunk a little bit to avoid some of these pressure situations. But seeing him hit Butte down the field, seeing him get Diggs involved a little bit here and there, seeing all these weapons that are kind of happening around him, that's been fun. I do also think that the running game they estimated would be a little bit better than it's been to this point. I want to see Travion Henderson take that step forward as well, because when he does so, it's going to make it so you can't just load up the box on some of these passing downs and really hurt Drake May in that regard. But until they take some of these steps forward, this is probably just a 500 team.
Someone who seems to get just no respect, but I know both of us love him, is Jared Goff. I think he's
Yeah.
looked really good. I think he's been for sure top tier. When I think about who are like, 10 or so quarterbacks that I would want to have on my team that I want to win with, he's on that list. And they have him with a 69 pass rating and a 51 rushing, whatever. We know he's very immobile. That's fine. But as a passer, I've been very impressed with him. He's got a high percentage for completion. He gets the ball out quickly. He's handling pressure well. I get that he's on a really good team and maybe they're not giving him enough credit, but to me, Jared Goff just seems to be constantly overlooked. And I wonder if part of it is, smaller market, team around him is elite. He just doesn't get the respect.
Yeah, I think a lot of this data is being hurt by how bad of a game he had against Green Bay. And at that point, was Green Bay week one? I think it was week one. But I think at that point, people hadn't seen what Micah Parsons was on this Green Bay defense yet. So it's not like the coaching staff really had an opportunity to adjust accordingly. But since that Green Bay game, like they've had a big win against Baltimore, like they've shown that they do have that winning DNA underneath them. I obviously love the Jared Goff connection with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is just an absolute dog in the fold. I would like to see them get Jamison Williams in the fold a little bit more than they have, because I think having that deep threat down the field is going to really add more of an element to their offense, and it's going to help the team that I drafted on this channel. But overall, yeah, I think Jared Goff is more deserving of being in the top 10. And I think him showing that he can win football games by making the right pre snap judgment, get the right ball to the right player at the right time, especially in light of the game situation. I think Jared Goff is criminally underrated.
Yeah, I completely agree. Another guy who I think he received too much attention. I think he had come down to reality, and I think I'm saying it again, I think we're gonna see it with Jaden Daniels, but CJ Stroud, that guy has just fallen from grace, and I am well aware that the O-line is not good, but, I mean, he just doesn't look right. He's got receivers. He's got a team.
He's
At
throwing
some
ducks.
point, at some point, you have to go, "Well, is it the team? Is it him?" I mean, yes, it could be a combination, but you gotta be disappointed with what you've seen from Stroud.
Easily. He's not throwing good balls. Like, I don't really like Jake. You last before this season were thinking he had the potential to revert back to top 10. I think we saw a sophomore slump, and I don't know what the term is for a tertiary, like a third year slump, but it can't help to not have a running game. Like Joe Mixon being injured really hurts this team because he added an explosive element out of the backfield where, an ancient version of Nick Chubb is just not going to get the job done. And Woody Marks is probably not going to get the job done. Like, this is going to be a situation where a tough O line and a CJ Stroud that is just not throwing balls like he did in his rookie season. Like, he's got a passer rating well below 90, right? Or 88.7, below 90. He's got a completion percentage below 70. His time to throw 0.77, which is a bit high for a pocket passer. This is a guy that needs to get it figured out quick because he has options around him. Like Nico Collins should be an elite talent around him. I want more for CJ Stroud, but it does look like we're going to just see massive reversion for the seeable future.
You know who I don't expect more from? Spencer Rattler. I got him on my fantasy team, but, I don't expect any more than he's produced. I think
These
he's
are QB
producing well. QB4.
four. Okay.
Yeah. but he is producing, I would argue, at well above his weight. Like, I think he's actually punching at a higher weight than anyone expected. Like, I actually don't think he's been absolutely horrible. I think he's been, like, mediocre. You know,
I mean,
I don't see anything changing here, but he's actually seems, like, serviceable as a good backup,
like, as a good backup, fine, fine.
right?
But it's not hard to punch above your weight when everyone's expecting, when like the weight that people are expecting is not that high. Like, if everybody's just trying to say, hey, can you just exist? It's not hard to do better than just exist. With
You
Spencer
know who's
Rattler,
punching below their weight, way below their weight? Your boy, your buddy, Brock Purdy.
yeah, yeah.
He is becoming irrelevant once again because he has not looked good. Obviously,
No,
injury plagued, but even in the games that he's played, I have seen very little from him. I would not feel confident in him as my quarterback moving
no,
forward for the long term.
I'm having difficulty with him myself. He only has a 2 game sample, and I give him a pass on that first game because when George Kittle goes down, he's likely the best receiving talent outside of CMC. I do put him above Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, though. When you have your number one receiving talent in your game plan go down as early as he did, it is tough to make that adjustment mid game. What we saw yesterday, or on Sunday rather, because I don't know when this is going to get released. He's not quite hitting the mark the way that he did last season, and I do worry that it's like based on the timing of when he got paid. Right now, he's not up to the same level of accuracy that we're used to from Brock Purdy. He's holding the ball a little bit longer than he normally does. He right now is at about 2.9. I want to see him closer to the 2.5 number. He's not scrambling nearly as much as you'd expect either. Basically, what I'm saying is we're not seeing the same level of decision making and the same level of accuracy that we've seen in seasons past. Can clean that up for the end of the season. Sure, it's going to be hard without Kittle in the lineup because he's still on the IR, but Brock Purdy is definitely taking a step back compared to last season.
To me, the Cleveland Browns quarterback room is interesting. They are staying and remaining adamant that they want to keep going with Joe Flacco. Like I was just reading today, and they're saying, "Nope, we're still going with him. We don't care how many games we lose." And I just don't understand. Like at some point, I get that you're protecting Gabriel and Sanders, but at some point, you got to figure Stefanski's job is going to be on the line, and he's going to have no choice.
No, no, I think Stefanski is. I think the Browns have done so much this season, despite not having a serviceable quarterback, that Stefanski's job should be protected. That defense looks great enough that Joe Flacco can keep you in a game against the Green Bay like that. Stefanski's doing a phenomenal job, in my opinion. Now, I'll remember that. Go back to preseason. What do you want? Do you want Shador or do you want Dylan Gabriel?
Well, I know who I still want. I still want Shador, but I know that Gabriel's their backup, and they've brought him in twice already. So I'm going to assume that when they finally do pull the trigger and they finally shift old Joe aside, they're going with Dylan Gabriel. At least they're going to give him the first crack at it, which I don't agree with, but I think that it's reasonable to assume.
Yeah. It sounds like Dylan Gabriel's their guy. I don't think we have anything to learn from putting Joe Flacco in these games. I actually think it just seems mean to make the 4-year-old go out there and experience a car crash every week. Like it doesn't seem like the best thing just to do. I personally like what I saw in preseason out of Shador a bit more than I saw out of Dylan Gabriel. Now, they obviously have way more information than we do because they're in practice every week with them. So week in, week out is the more precise way of wording that. But I want to see them put someone else in. I think this Cleveland Browns season is not done. I think that if we got a bit more out of the quarterback room, we could actually see them make a bit of a playoff run here. This defense has shown us enough. And I kind of do want to see a turning of the ties sooner rather than later because what we're getting out of Flacco is just not good enough.
And there was another guy that I meant to talk about, but now I forgot. Oh wait, now I remembered. The concussions went away. Tua Tagovailoa. He's totally done. Right, we're finished with him. Like he's not serviceable.
I mean,
pretty much at this
they
point.
beat the Jets. Does that count for something?
No, it doesn't.
I mean,
It counts for nothing.
Tyreek just lost his whole leg, so I don't know what we're gonna get out of that offense. I'm not a big believer in Jalen Waddle, although Darren Waller looked good. Darren Waller, if we get a return to form, that is actually exciting enough for me because getting a big presence over the middle will help a guy like Tua who needs to get the ball out quicker, especially because he's always just one play away from finding himself on the IR again. He's still relatively accurate. He's still got enough options around him that could be interesting, but obviously they're not going anywhere fast.
No, and I think the idea that that Tua was the savior of the Dolphins like that, I think that bus has passed.
No, I think he largely formed a reputation on the back of Tyreek Hill's best statistical season, and it wasn't his own doing.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And another guy who
There were a
I
bunch of
would
names in
argue
that
is
list though that you said before we
we got
got into this
more.
whole site. There's some serious names in that list still.
So another one I want to cover here. He's got, and I've said it so many times, he's got such a cool name, but man, he's having that sophomore slump. Bo Nix. What a fall from grace. Like we saw with CJ Stroud. Bo Nix looks like a different guy in, I think, every regard, right? I don't think there's a category that I can't consider him to be worse at.
Yeah, I mean his average depth of target is below 7. Like, the whole thing coming into the season that we said was we want to see him take that next step up, hit more people downfield. We thought Evan Ingram was going to open things up for him. We thought that this improved running attack was going to open things up for them. It could just be that he's coming out of the gate slow, but they've had some pretty opportunistic matchups where I would have expected them to do more. Now, last night in the Monday Night Football game against the Cincinnati Bengals, it did seem like we are getting that team like in unison with one another a little bit more, and that might give them some momentum going into week 5. But Bo Nix, he's looking more like the quarterback people feared he could be in his rookie season rather than the form he became by the end of last season. So this is going to be one that we're going to have to monitor going forward.
Another guy to monitor who I know that you have a lot of faith in is Michael Penix Jr.
That's
You
what I
know,
wanted to
this is
talk about.
it's his first real true full season. Statistically speaking, you know, nothing jumps off the charts as impressive, but there's something about him. I know he's a lefty, so the ball comes out a little different. There's something about him that makes you want to believe. I mean, I guess partly is also their division, but I'm curious to see what you think because yeah, when I look at the stats across the board, there's really nothing particularly impressive other than that he's able to get the ball out pretty quickly.
Okay, here's my issue with Michael Penix. There's a couple issues that are happening here. Okay, he's good in positive game script situations. So you may recall week 1, right out the gate, he gets that great drive downfield, largely by linking up with Bijan Robinson on the outsides, and then they get themselves right downfield for an immediate easy score before the offense from there doesn't look nearly as good. In the game against the Commanders, I don't think the Falcons trailed at any point in that game, despite a very good Marcus Mariota, who we've already talked about. But if you're never trailing in that game and you see him when he's most confident, you're seeing balls with crazy power behind him. And my difficulty in week 2 and week 3 is it feels like a rookie situation where a coach says, hey, stick within like these really laid out and structured lines. And that's not who Michael Penix is. So you're not putting your weapon in the position where it's most effective. And what I want to see from that coaching staff is let him unleash the ball. Like, let him do cool things because he's got the arm talent there. It's possible they don't trust his decision making, but let him make mistakes. Give him some permission. You're in a weak division. Let him do good things. You got Bijan Robinson in the backfield if, you got to switch things up a little bit here. But if you're dinking and dunking with a guy that has that powerful of an arm in negative game script situations, it doesn't make any sense.
I can't believe we waited this long to talk about this next guy.
Who you
He is
got?
the number one ranked player in this category. Number one ranked. in interceptions. Geno Smith, he has been awful. He is done. I think everything we saw in him in the past was a fluke. This guy could not be more done. He can run the ball, and that is literally it. He is so done. 7 interceptions to start the season. He's looked miserable.
Okay. Can we also, in that same breath, talk about how terrible that offensive line has been? Where I don't know if it's still the case after week 4, but Ashton Genty's yards after contact is like over 100%. It's that Raiders team needs to do something. Like, this explains perfectly why Jacoby Myers was demanding a trade. They also have Thornton in that, who I want to see doing more. You got Brock Bowers, who I don't think has fully recovered from that PCL injury. He does not look right. Like, this Raiders team overall is a dumpster fire. And Geno Smith is just the beginning of it. He is done, but like, the Raiders have so many. I don't know where you start first.
Yeah, it's a mess of a team. I mean, look, I think ultimately there's going to be major changes. There's going to be major overhaul. Yeah, clearly when your top receiver is asking to be traded, like, all those things are not a good way to start the season. But even with all those problems, for Geno Smith to be this bad, this pathetic, this early on in the season, it doesn't bode well for the rest of the season. And again, things could change. They could clean things up. They could make some shifts on the O-line, but he's totally
No, no.
toast.
Anyone that was expecting anything out of Geno Smith was just lying to themselves. Like, that's
Like,
all it is.
anyone who thought, oh yeah, this is gonna work out for the Raiders. We're gonna,
No,
ride on Geno Smith's coattails. No, like, he's donezo.
no. We got
Speaking
some,
of another
yeah.
guy who's riding on coattails, except that the coat, I think, is gone by now. Trevor Lawrence. I think he's run his course. I mean, the guy is. We can confidently call him a bust at this point, can we not? He is a bust.
I do want to call him a bust. It's a
I
much
mean,
more fun
first
take than to.
overall. If you take a guy first overall, this is what his season. Is this his
What do you think
fourth
about?
year?
What do you think about Travis Hunter?
Yeah, it's a bust too. I mean, but it's 1 year. It's 1 year. Like,
Is
Lawrence, is he in his 4th or 5th season? I think he's in his 4th year.
I'm not gonna be able to do that off the top of my head.
Regardless, Trevor Lawrence, drafted first overall, has had multiple seasons to get this right. And I don't have all the stats in front of me season to season, but just from the good old eyeball test, he's getting worse every year. He's getting worse every single year. Trevor Lawrence is a total and utter bust.
Yeah, I mean, they're lucky. They're lucky, right? Their defense has played as well as it has. My difficulty is I can't trust Trevor Lawrence in a critical game situation. I feel like every play I've seen in a critical game situation, he's made the wrong decision. He's made a bad throw. There might have been a drop too, because I'm seeing a pretty significant drop percentage in his data as well. Trevor Lawrence, not the guy. And this is my problem that we said on the draft, where if you're mortgaging your future on Travis Hunter and you got Trevor Lawrence, who's not the guy, this is not going to work out.
Never leverage your draft picks and sacrifice your future for a receiver when you don't have the right quarterback. Everyone knows, don't make that mistake. They knew going into this season that at best, Trevor Lawrence becomes an average quarterback. At worst, he's horrible. And it's the worst situation. He's horrible. Talking about another bust, Bryce Young. That is another bust. I'm sorry, when you're drafted at that high level and the team believes in you, you have to perform. And not that anyone had big expectations for the Carolina Panthers this year, but once again, I mean, Bryce Young does not look like an NFL player, not even a backup.
Well, they did shut out the Falcons, Jay. They have had a couple moments in the sun, and that defense is quite good. Bryce Young, though, he's not the quarterback. I think that now that we're seeing T-Mac on the team and what should be a massive step forward as a result of it, I think now Carolina as an organization can safely move on from Bryce Young. I think we can largely call the later half of last season a bit of a statistical outlier for him. Now, it's possible he's just like a late bloomer every season and like he just improves once we get to week 9. But for right now, Bryce Young is making it very easy for a GM to come to the conclusion that they just don't have the right quarterback.
Talking about a guy who's our favorite guy. I mean, we have to call him our favorite. Josh Allen. Josh Allen, to me, has had an incredible start to the season, has looked fantastic, has looked as good as he's ever looked. Really no step backwards for the reigning MVP. Statistically, PFF grading, I think is good, not amazing. They have him at number 5. Surprised they have his passing at 78.8. Now, I think a lot of that is attributed to that he's not being asked to do as much, which is a great thing. You wanna be in a position where the rest of your team can handle more. But Josh Allen looks, as elite as ever, right?
Yeah. Now, the feedback I would have for Josh Allen is completely unfair. And it's nitpicking because he's that much more like if I'm trying to put him on the same level of feedback as any other quarterback, I obviously wouldn't be nitpicking in the same way. Like everyone else has actual problems. For Josh Allen, he's not throwing the ball 20 plus yards down the field nearly like he used to, but I don't think you need to when you got James Cook having this season that he's having at running back. Like everybody thought that James Cook's ceiling was what we saw out of him last season, and somehow he went up an entire other level from there. So if you're doing that, why would you take as many 20 plus yard pass risks with this receiving core? Like it doesn't make much sense. The other piece of it too is he is getting sacked more often. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on this offensive line and just see how well they're doing. And Josh Allen is like, he's still phenomenal with his legs, but I think a big part of how his sack percentage was so low last season was how he was using his legs. This Saints game left a lot to be desired. I would want to see a nice bounce back week 5 here against the Patriots, especially out of a division game. But Josh Allen, he's en route to another MVP season, in my opinion. Like, who else right now could you even argue is more valuable than Josh?
Yeah, no, it's been total domination from Josh. And the other piece I have to mention is completion percentage. It is so nice to see a 7. It's so nice to see it be in the 70%. I think that's very impressive. I think it speaks to what you're saying. He's needing to take less risks, which is why he's able to take care of the ball and he only has 1 interception. So, been a wonderful start for him. Another wonderful start for another guy who we did talk a little bit about in terms of JJ McCarthy being a bad move, not keeping Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold on Seattle, once again, he's putting together a very nice season. I mean, statistically speaking, very impressive by the old eyeball test, also very impressive.
Yeah, Sam Darnold is a system quarterback. And that's what I think is showing in this data. Like they're not asking Sam Darnold to do an aggressive amount here. Now, I do stand by what I said earlier. I think Minnesota should have signed him because it doesn't make sense to lose that level of stability in quarterback, especially now with what we've seen from JJ McCarthy. But for Sam Darnold, JSN is getting enough separation. They're doing some cool things with the Horton. There's some cool things going on in that offense, but they're really not asking him to make the same level of crazy amounts of decisions based on what you're improvising, what's happening in front of you, as other quarterbacks are being asked. Now, is he doing his job well? Yes. Is he making some of these pre-snap reads correct? Yes. But having Sam Darnold in this PFF data as what do you got? Like, is he quarterback 3 where you have him? I'm operating off of a different minimum drawback list.
Quarterback number 3, just behind
He's
Dak
not
Prescott.
quarterback 3. So I think that this does show there is some drawbacks here in terms of how PFF. You can't be giving a system quarterback that isn't single-handedly putting the game on his own back. It just doesn't make sense. This is dumbfounding.
I agree. I think that this is always the challenge is the data, and I've said this since the day we started this show, the data only tells you so much. It gives you a picture and it can give you an idea and it can prove a lot of points. But at the end of the day, there are intangibles that just cannot be calculated and accounted for. And to me, this is a perfect example. No one in their right mind would ever say that Sam Darnold or Dak Prescott or Marcus Mariota or even Matt Stafford are anywhere even remotely in the same stratosphere as Josh Allen. And all four of those guys are ranked higher than Josh Allen. So, for that reason alone, we have to take all of this data with a grain of salt. Not to mention, on top of it, it's only a quarter way through the season. This is Q1. Q2, Q3, Q4, and Q5 may be different. They should be different. So, I think that those things need to be taken into account. And I think we got one big name left, two big names. Okay. Kyler Murray and
Justin Herbert.
so it's interesting between these two. Justin Herbert coming into the league, the way he adapted to the league, he had some monster years, 4,000, 5,000 plus yards. I kind of would consider him to be an elite quarterback. However, he's got one plaguing issue that cannot be showed in any of these stats that you and I are looking at right now. He's got a winning problem. And I get that people are going to argue with me now, oh, but he's won so many games this season. It's been a great start. Yes, it's true. But look at every year of his. There's struggles to win in the big moments, in the big games. He just doesn't have that winning DNA.
I think that Justin Herbert is the Madison Beer of quarterbacks. I think in both situations you have a phenomenal talent, but if you look at the wins columns or the record sales columns, it's significantly lower than what you'd expect based on the talent that's there, and it's difficult to explain why. Like, I think Justin Herbert has a crazy arm. He's 6'6". He can run when he needs to. He can make big plays when he needs to. But when the game is on the line, he's losing games to Jaxson Dart. I can't explain it, but in both situations, you got phenomenal talent. But in the key metric on how we grade how talented they are, Madison Beer and Justin Herbert seem a lot of the same to me, and it makes sense to me that they're dating each other. Which also, I'm also getting like, I've had a lot of like weird conversations in the DMs of how did Justin Herbert? He's a 6'6" quarterback. That makes sense. I don't understand how people are saying it makes no sense that they're dating. Like, that part of it is also confounding to me.
Yeah, Justin Herbert's a good-looking guy, tall, big, cool flow. He's an NFL player making tens of millions of dollars a year. Who wouldn't want to date
He's
him?
rich, tall, good. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, there's really no question there. Now, speaking of rich but not tall, but a disappointment, Kyler Murray. He has very similar track record, I would argue, to Justin Herbert. There was so much potential. There's so much talent there, but he also doesn't really seem to care. Like, there's another aspect to that, right? With so many players, we don't even cover the idea of their passion. We just believe they're all super passionate, love the game. I don't necessarily think, and obviously I don't know Kyler. I haven't sat down in a room with him. All I can do is assume from all the information I'm given, he does not seem to be a guy that really, really cares.
Yeah, I mean, the franchise communicated they didn't believe that either when they stipulated how much time he can play COD and how much time he has to start, learning the playbook. But I actually like what I've seen out of Kyler this year. I didn't want to, I didn't expect to. They're 2-2, and I think he gets a lot of the credit for it. I like what we're seeing out of him to this point in the season. I think he's shown some really good scrambles he's up to 15 scrambles. He's chasing some of that lead in the season. And that's despite having, a 25% pressure rate. Like, for us to be able to say he's still finding himself getting wins together, despite the fact that his O-line doesn't seem like it's doing him many favors. He's not turning the ball over that often. He's doing a lot of cool things right, but I am seeing a problem where they're not getting the ball that far downfield. Like, I think with Trey McBride, he's really getting saved with a lot of dinking and dunking, and Trey McBride just happens to be an elite talent there. The other thing too is I think we're going to see a situation where they got to rely on Kyler Murray even more with James Conner. I don't think Trey Benson is as good as James Conner. I don't think Demercado is as good as James Conner. I think it's going to be a situation where the running game coming down is really going to test Kyler. And these next 4 weeks are really going to show us, can Kyler really sustain this top 10 level quarterback of production?
Yeah, bold take. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's actually that bold. Kyler Murray is going to fall apart this season. I think with the lack of weapons and his inability to really show up in these big moments, I think like a Herbert, the team's going to fall apart and they're going to lose quite a few games.
Also, Marvin Harris Jr. dropping balls the way he has, they might actually be a perfect fit for one another because, like, these are guys that, from a talent point of view, should be elite, but there's something between the ears that's preventing them from getting to that next level.
Yeah, just something not quite right. But look, that's gonna do it for us. This was an amazing Q1 QB Lab report card coming at you. We're excited to have more and more episodes again. As always, check us out. Smash that subscribe button, hit that like button. Keep watching all of our shorts. We chop up these videos so you can watch them in little tidbits too, and you can enjoy it throughout your week every single week. So thank you so much. And this is the QB Lab podcast.